everyone. Bob Zagami here, Executive Director of the New England RV Dealers Association, and I am so happy to be back. I'm going to bring my co-host up here. John has done welcome, John, and welcome to the show, and glad to be back. And first off, thank you very much for filling in the last, I don't know, was it 4 weeks or 5 weeks since I've been here?
I think it was 3 months.
yeah.
It was like 3 months at the time. But Bob, we want to certainly welcome you back, and it's amazing to think that about 168 hours ago, because it's 168 hours in a week, they were just rolling you on a gurney out of that OR to the quote-unquote recovery room.
Yeah, I had major back surgery last Wednesday, and if anybody ever told me I'd be sitting here tonight, pain-free, medication-free, I couldn't believe it. It 4 disc fused. I had some scoliosis corrected, and had some great new titanium screws and bolts and rods stuck in my back, and I'm on the road to recovery. So I'm happy to be back tonight. I'm delighted to be back tonight.
Hey, Bob, while you were gone, we figured out a new opening for the show. You want to hear it?
Yeah, sure.
We're doing it for the first time. You
Okay.
ready? Here we go. Live from New England. It's Wednesday night live.
Well, that's not bad.
How's that? Forget those guys in New York on Saturday night.
Yeah, well, that's cool. I don't know if you want to be associated with the guys in New York.
Live from New England, it's Wednesday Night Live. It's the New England RV Dealers Association Facebook Live show starring not me and not you and not our special guest, but our audience, because our audience is really the people that make the show. And as we look, let's see who we got here. We got a lot of people already.
Andy Parr jumped on there. Well, tell them who we have for a guest tonight, John. This is going to be a terrific show. This is a hot topic.
You know what? But one of the things that we try to do is provide a little bit of a different angle each week, a little different topic each week, so as to not bore our audience. Because the last thing we want to do is lose people to say, "Hey, this was a boring show." But for the last few weeks, when we've been going out RVing, I've been noticing these bikes on the back of a lot of travel trailers and motorhomes. And then I realized these are the bikes that you and I sampled and tried when Bill Sell brought them to the Boston RV show. And they were over in the car show because the RV show is so successful. There's not an extra inch of space. I should say to our audience, and we're going to find all about them because we've got a great guest, Ray Verhelst, who's one of the top experts in the country on this. But it should be noted that when I tried my bike, I successfully got on and off without any issues. Unfortunately, we can't say the same with you. Did you go into a wall or just fall?
Well, I just I was doing a U-turn on the slippery concrete and went down, and that was not the cause of my back surgery. That was just poor balance. So
it might have pushed it up a little bit.
Right.
Ray, we were watching. I don't know if Ray can hear us yet, but we were watching Bob, and all of a sudden he went off the radar screen, just like those JetBlue pilots last night with the radio that didn't work, and then we ran down, and here he was dusting himself off, saying, "Wow, I didn't realize the floor was that slippery." But these are revolutionary because they still allow you the opportunity for exercise, but more importantly, if your body is getting a little rickety and old and your muscles are not what they used to be, our friend Ray, who joins us from Las Vegas, is going to tell us everything we need to know about electric bikes, how we can purchase one, what to do to learn how to ride one, how long they last, what various types there are, and virtually everything else. And Ray, from Las Vegas to New England, welcome, buddy.
Welcome, Ray.
Hey. Thanks, guys. Good. I'm glad, Bob. I'm glad you're back out of there and feeling well. And we'll see what happens the next time you get on a bike. Yeah, unfortunately, that's one of the challenges whenever we would do demos is to, if it were indoors, the slick concrete inside of a convention center and rubber tires, typically it doesn't really match well. So that's a challenge that everybody has to deal with. We actually did an event in Philadelphia, and we sprayed Coke syrup all over the concrete to avoid that. But
That's a good idea.
That's another story. So
the thing you didn't realize is that the Coke rotted the concrete.
No, it actually it worked fine while the air conditioning was on. When they turned the air conditioning off on the last day, it got so warm the Coke started to become liquid again, and then people started falling. But this time, when they got up, they were covered in Coke syrup, so it wasn't good.
Bob, why don't we tell Ray some of our guests that are here tonight? I see Walter. I see. Is it Noni or Noni? I don't know if that name is new. Laura looks like a new name. Andy Parg is here. And Andy, I just want to make you feel welcome here. And I'll say it, okay? And we're not really going into a break, but if we were going into break, this is what we'd say. We'll be back with more, but first, this is Today on NBC. How's that, Andy?
And I'm Andy Parg, the gadget guru. We gotta introduce him to Ray also. Ray, how'd you get connected with these electric bikes?
Well, I've been involved, similar to Bill, in the exhibition and the trade show industry for as many as 30 years. Bill and I go back that far. But I took a different direction, and I have a technical background. And I was doing some consulting for some Asian organizations and teaching for UNLV overseas for adult education programs. And so I got involved in the lithium battery industry very early on in the phase of its resurgence. And we looked at the marketplace of where lithium batteries were going outside of cell phones and small portable electronics. And definitely I was part of that early phase of looking at electric vehicles and different markets where rechargeable technology was going to become an important asset. One of the things that I ended up doing is that I was involved with the Governor's Office of Economic Development here in Las Vegas for the state of Nevada. And we looked at how to entice manufacturing and bring it into the U.S. To potentially get involved with the battery technology. So I was blending my background with international trade, international events, the Governor's Office of Economic Development, and teaching as an adjunct professor at UNLV, and then put all of that together with event stuff. So we got involved, and I was involved with a battery manufacturing facility in China, produced a number of events in China and India and throughout the world around technology. And one of the areas of concentration that I looked at for the U.S. market was light electric vehicles, or in this case, electric bicycles. And in the early days, and we're talking about going back just a little history. I mean, electric bicycles have been around since the 1900s, but the resurgence actually came from a name many people our age will remember, and that's Lee Iacocca. And right. He brought in the concept of electrifying bicycles back to become what they called a last mile transportation option, meaning, that you parked your car in a public garage and then an electric bike could get you that last mile effectively. And so they started to develop these bikes, but they were doing them very, very early on. And quite frankly, they weren't of the best quality. And coming from spending a lot of time in China, particularly in Suzhou and Shenzhen, we're dealing with a marketplace for electric bikes. In China, there's 37 million electric bikes produced every year. 90% of them are used by the Chinese domestically as their primary means of transport for lower and middle income workers to be able to get to and from. It's only the top 10% that is made into the premium level with the rechargeable lithium batteries that gets exported. And so now you have that, and then you have the emerging markets coming out of Europe, Australia, and a number of other places that are developing the technologies and making these bikes even better. And so I got involved looking at the battery technology and how to make the batteries better, and then subsequently realized that the only way the electric bike market was going to grow in North America is you had to put butts on seats. because there was no way to explain to anybody. I mean, we all grew up riding bikes, and you can think back to when you were 7 or 8 years old in the driveway and dad's pushing you without the training wheels, and you remember exactly how to ride that bike. But there's no way to convey the difference when you get on an electric bike and feel the difference that the bike can provide until you ride one. And so,
Bill, Ray, let me stop you there, because I absolutely, totally agree with you on that, because when you get on it and pedal, that's one thing. But as soon as Bill showed me how to apply power, it's a totally different feeling. And it's kind of an empowering feeling, because you know that you're not going to get tired out like you would. And, you know, many of the people that are RVing and are carrying these, I mean, you see a lot of people that are, you know, towing go-karts. I mean, they're towing go-karts.
Yeah.
Not go-karts, golf carts, I'm sorry.
Golf carts, sure. Golf carts. No, I know.
And this is a lot easier to transport if you have the proper.
Right. And again, I'm an RVer for many years, and so I can tell you that the pain of, you know, a tag along with a car attached to it, and all of the issues that come with towing something behind your RV, it's a challenge. To put bicycles on there, of course, we're dealing with that old issue. What an electric bike basically does, and let me just explain that, it's what we call a pedal assist. It's a very compact electric motor, whether it be in the hub, in the wheel itself, or it be what they call in the bottom bracket, which is where the pedals are. But the motors are very, very compact. In reality, if you're familiar with the name Bosch out of Germany, they started out, when they engineered it, they were using window wiper motors. I mean, that's how small the motor is, but it delivers with gearing enough torque to be able to move a 170-pound person 20 miles an hour without any effort at all. And so what these things are designed to do is to assist. And so what you found when you rode the bike is there was a little display that allowed you to select the level of assistance that you needed. So if you're a fairly athletic person, but maybe you got a bad knee from tennis that kicks in after a few miles of pedaling, you could put the bike on what they call the economy level. And the only time the bike, it uses speed sensors and torque sensors, and it measures basically in 1,000 times per second. But what it's doing is, as soon as you come to a hill, it recognizes that the bike is now in some kind of strain, torque or speed, and the motor starts to kick in to supplement. So if you only keep it on economy, you know, then it's only going to effectively support your ride when you come to a hill. If you put it on the normal level in here, then it's pretty much going to kick in as you start to pedal on a regular basis, and it'll give you some level of support, more than the economy level. And then there's a third level that's typically what they call turbo, which you really only have to move the pedals for the bike to automatically start to supplement the ride all the way up to roughly 20 miles an hour.
You know, Bob certainly found that out. Ray, Ray, you have an engineering background. I can tell you have an engineering background.
Yeah, one question. I got a question from Joyce Lebanon, and I want to build on it a little bit, because I just spent, prior to the surgery, I spent 3 weeks in Italy, and I'm surprised I didn't kill at least 100 Italians on their scooters. So with the advances that you're seeing, and I want you to explain the difference for Joyce, but with the advances in the technology, and I think wasn't Bermuda that just banned, Martha's Vineyard just banned mopeds the other day. Do we see a decrease in the future of mopeds and scooters because of the efficiency and the technology that they're building into electric bikes? So I'll let you go ahead and answer Joyce's question.
Well, the first thing is you're dealing with a bicycle versus a moped. A moped is going to be heavier. It may have an increased speed. Most of them are designed to go as fast as 30 miles per hour. Bicycles, they're lighter, more compact, and more efficient to be able to operate. And in many cases, they're free to travel in places that a scooter is not, or a moped. And so on a public street or something, obviously you can ride almost anything. But on bike lanes or bike paths, there are many states where what they call a class 1 bicycle, electric bike, which is where the only time the motor activates is when you pedal it. They've actually classified those in 22 states as being a legitimate regular bicycle, which means you can go on bike lanes and bike paths. That's a big difference. You can't do that on a moped. And I know of some campgrounds that won't allow motorized vehicles on any of their paths. They'll let you ride on the public streets, but if you want to be able to get to the tennis courts or to the pool or some of the other areas, you're not allowed to ride that moped up into in that area, whereas the bicycle you could.
Hey, Ray.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question regarding that. A moped usually has a motor that is, combustion with gas, so it's considered a motor. But would these electric bikes be considered motorized or just assisted? Because again, I'm not a lawyer and don't.
Yeah, no, that's the challenge of the clarification. There is no official harmonized code for electric bikes, and they get lumped in with mopeds and scooters. Mm-hmm. The reality is, in some places like national parks, they consider electric bikes to be motorized vehicles. Now, some places are attempting to change that, but it's very hard to get the Bureau of Land Management to make changes that way. So it's a little tougher. You can still use the bike on what they call an HOA trail, which is normally like a gravel trail that you can ride motorcycles, ATVs, all those different types. But a lot of the more mountainous mountain bikes or some single track bike lanes on public lands, still not allowed to be able to use them there. But when we're dealing with RV people, that's usually not the place that they're going to be riding these bikes.
Right. They're going to be in the park.
Well, again, I talked to you the other day, and I was citing an example of being able to go to wine country, park the RV in a camp spot, and be able to take your electric bike and go out and wander around from vineyard to vineyard. I mean, the power of the motor is going to get you up all of the vineyard hills. You'll have the ability, even on full assist, you'll get 30, 35 miles of distance out of a single charge. If you're more athletic, you could get 50 miles on a single charge. And, we're talking about 9 cents worth of electricity. I mean, that's all you're using. And the other thing that's important on these bikes, and we talked about this, is these bikes have the ability to carry more weight than you realize. And I know that we had talked about cargo bikes, but the ability to add baskets and other elements, I can think of, and again, John, we talked about this. I mean, I've stayed in some very, very large campgrounds where I've been forced to rent a golf cart just to be able to get to the general store. I mean, the reality is my electric bike could save me significantly, and I could carry 150 pounds worth of groceries on that and still not feel it when I'm pedaling. So
and it should also be pointed out that in some of the parks that rent golf carts, I mean, sometimes they're $45 or $50 a day, more than a car to go out on the street.
Without a doubt.
And I would think that there's a market for campgrounds to invest in some of these electric bikes, just as they have in the golf cart programs. Yeah. And have you seen campgrounds renting electric bikes, or do you see that as a viable marketplace for the manufacturers and dealers?
I see it as a tremendous opportunity, but you have to understand that the electric bike market is still feeling its way through the various opportunities. I mean, it's not just RVs. I mean, there are folding bikes that literally you could put 3 of them into one basement container on a Class A RV, that you can fold out in a couple of seconds and be able to go that way. So families can get these in that process. Cargo bikes are a little bit larger. The problem is that getting the RV the RV manufacturers as well as the electric bike manufacturers to kind of come together to understand that there's a great opportunity for them, both in rentals as well as sales. It's a challenge. I mean, it's the same thing. Think about a folding electric bike could fit in the back of a private plane. It could fit under the cushions in a boat. There's so many places to where these bikes could be used to where there's a fair distance from, let's say, your mooring, to the marina office. I mean, there's lots of things that way. It's just really, it's going to take innovators on the RV side that are willing to step up and go and introduce themselves. But by the same token, the electric bike side, they need to understand that there are markets outside of the bicycle shops to where there's opportunities for this. I'll tell you,
we have a lot.
We can all agree that the word innovation and RV industry generally,
Sure.
you know, the RV industry, no matter what, I mean, it seems like their motto is that's the way we've always done it. And
Yeah,
really,
well,
the only thing they've changed is full paint versus decals.
Sure.
These are very pretty similar. But as far as these bikes are concerned, Bob and I were talking earlier, when they first were introduced, you know, 5 or 6 years ago, they were $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. And that was kind of a novelty item for somebody who had a 45-foot Prevost, probably like Andy, you know, that had the storage capability. But the pricing has come down considerably, and they're certainly well within reach of, you know, it's not a what do you call it, a luxury item anymore.
Well, let's be, I want to be clear. I mean, this is not a Walmart bike. This is going to be more expensive. You're looking at bikes that are ranging from about $1,900 all the way up to some of the esoteric stuff that's out there that's very, very expensive. No need to get into the price points. But the average bike that you're going to get for your these kinds of opportunities are going to end up being in the $2,000 to $2,500 range. Now, the difference is these are very, very well-built bikes. They are not the economy stuff that you find. And they have to be because that motor is delivering an amount of torque to everything on that bicycle, from the frame to the spokes to the chain, that have all got to be capable of handling those increased speeds. Even the brakes on them. You'll find that the majority of the electric bikes now come with hydraulic disc brakes. The reason is if I'm doing 20 miles an hour, I need to be able to stop. And the old squeeze brake on the rim, it's not going to cut it. So,
especially if you use the front brake.
Yeah. Again, it's just these are things that people need to understand that when you make the investment, you know, it's part of it. Now, let me also say, when you said, you know, looking at one of the things you alluded to is talking about quality. There are many companies out there that are importing bikes that literally can hang a shingle somewhere and say, I'm in the bike business. But there's some real challenges that everybody has to understand, and I'm sure you've seen them, about lithium batteries and all of the other stuff. And that is, there has to be some quality and certification behind these products. And there has to be, if you're going to buy a product like that, just like you would with an RV, you want to make sure that there's a warranty and that there's some element of serviceability with it. You don't want to have to be able to call somebody in China to get your bike fixed at midnight. So there are battery certifications and there are bicycle certifications that these products go through, and there is liability insurance that these companies have to carry to make sure that you're protected. And so I know it's the mundane stuff, it's the bad stuff to talk about, but at the end of the day, if I'm making an investment, let's say in 2 bikes for my wife and I've put $4,000 down, I want to make sure that they're going to last and that they're going to be protected.
Yeah. Ray, with that being said, let's talk about American manufacturers and local dealer networks that if you buy it in New England, can you still get it serviced in the South or the West or the Northwest?
Sure.
How much American manufacturing is there? Because we know there's so much stuff that comes to China. Even some of those Vespa-like scooters aren't made in Italy, but they're made in China.
Oh, without a doubt. Again, and the hard truth is 97% of all bicycle parts are made in China. At the end of the day, the last major production facility of a name that you would be familiar with, although the Huffy is back and they're in North Carolina producing bikes. But if you remember Schwinn left the United States 15 years ago to start manufacturing overseas because they couldn't compete here. At the end of the day, all of the brands that are here, there are some that actually do final assembly here in the United States. And one of them I know you guys are talking to is Pedigo. They're out in Fountain Valley or the Irvine area. They have about 60,000 square feet where they import all of the components but do the final assemblies there. And they have about 120 retailers that are licensed retailers around the United States and into Canada that are selling Pedigo bikes. So that's one example. But the other brands that are out there now, and this is important, in the last, when you mentioned, my early stages in this, 6 or 7 years ago, there were only a handful of companies that had any kind of distribution regionally or even nationally. And the major brands basically were putting up the sign of the cross whenever you mentioned electric bikes. But now you're dealing with every major brand in the bicycle marketplace that you're familiar with. Trek, Cannondale, Specialized, Shimano, what else? Even Schwinn is back now. You've got all of these major brands that now have full lines of electric bikes. And you have a number of manufacturers coming out of Europe that are very, very popular and very, very durable that have set up what they call U.S. distributors. And those distributors have created dealer networks, and the products are out in there's two different types of dealers. We have what they call IBDs, which are independent bike dealers. And then they have EIBDs, which are dedicated electric independent bike dealers, and that's all they sell is electric bikes. And so you can look them up on different websites. You can look them up locally in the news. You can stop most of your bike shops. There's still some opinions out there, guys that are old school, haven't made the jump, but there's a lot more out there. There's probably 300,000 or 400,000 bikes a year being sold into North America, and it's on an average of about a 20% growth annually.
Hey, Ray, let me ask you this question. If
Sure.
you were someone possibly like myself who's not mechanically inclined, but is interested in this category, is it wise to look at an Amazon type retailer? Not an Amazon type, Amazon, or would you think that it would be more beneficial in the long run to deal with an independent bike dealer or someone who was a distributor of a certain brand, so that you had nationwide coverage? Because some RVers had. Let
me just cut you off right here and tell you point blank that a lot of the major manufacturers that are out there, Trek, Raleigh, iZip, many of these brands have started what they're calling it's a combination of online sales, where the bike is then delivered to a local bike shop that does the final assembly and you go in and pick it up. So if you're looking for a deal, you can do that. The reason I would not buy bikes that are completely unknown is, to give you an example, the battery that's inside there is a rechargeable lithium battery. If the battery has not gone through the normal proper certification for import and transport responsibilities, which is the ability to ship it on an airplane or an UPS, you're dealing with a battery that has an unknown origin and the ability to do what they call thermal runaway. You've seen cell phones where they've literally, imploded in somebody's pocket. Well, you're dealing with 500 watts of 36 volt worth of battery underneath your rear end on a bicycle. And I'm just telling you that you want to make sure that these things have met the necessary safety standards to be transported and to be certified and to be warranted, where buying it online, I don't want to get into the nuances, but I can go to China today. I can write a check, and 12 weeks from now, a container can show up at my house and I can be in the bike business.
Just like that.
I don't know if you want to buy a bike from me.
Well, it's like any other product that you buy. You go for the quality and the service. If you if you go for the cheap stuff, then you're going to pay the price with it. It's just the fact of life.
Understand, guys, understand that 80% of an electric bike is a bicycle, which means that If you need tires, you can go to RCI, you can go to Walmart, you can go to Big Five, you can get a tire and a tube to match your rim. That's not the problem. The only elements on an electric bike that are unique to it are going to be the motor, the controller, the battery, and the display. After that, everything else is bicycle stuff. So if you need a chain, yeah.
Speaking of that, somebody just asked a question. Michelle just asked a question. Would they require a bike rack on our rig? Now, I know that she has a travel trailer,
sure.
And we discussed this earlier. It's very, very, very vital to keep in mind that if you buy one of these, you may not be able to use your regular bike rack because we're talking a significant weight difference, most of which is the battery. So,
well, the battery's about 8 or 9 pounds, and you can take the battery off. But the overall bike with the battery, they average between 50 and 60 pounds. Some of the cargo bikes are much heavier because they're much larger, but on average, 50 to 60 pounds. So if you have a bike rack that used to fit on the trunk of your car, one of these simple aluminum ones that you throw it up on the frame, odds are that's not gonna work out. So yeah, they do make bike racks that fit into trailer hitch elements. They make bike racks for RVs that'll mount onto the extruded aluminum bumper, that's out there with kind of seat clamps that can go. There's different things. I'd go to a bike shop and ask about it. Then that's an item that you may end up buying on Amazon or online because it's more of a commodity item, and you might find it that way.
Yep. But it's important. I mean, I even saw people comment because I put something on one of the Facebook groups a little while ago. Some people are even mounting them on the front of their vehicle because they have dedicated space. Plus, they can see if they're losing it. Of course, they'll know if they lose it when they run over it.
Right.
It should be noted that these vehicles are heavier. And I think we discussed briefly having a vehicle where the tires are resting on something, because a lot of these vehicles that have the step-through frames, they're different than what we would refer to as a boy's bike or a girl's bike, where the boy's bike had the bar and you had another place to attach it to. So,
and most of the manufacturers, the rack manufacturers like Thule and Hollywood and all of them have realized that they needed to develop beefier bike racks to be able to accommodate electric bikes. So if it's not out now, it's coming very shortly. And the more that's out, the more competitively priced they'll be. Again, I always, when I carried stuff on my RV, my concern was, as much as it was, the convenience of where it was, I was more concerned with the dirt that was on it after riding for 200 miles on the road, and making sure that I remembered when I went in to get food that there was something hanging off the back of the RV. And in the case of an electric bike, you want to make sure that the battery or some of the other elements have been removed and the bike has been locked up, because that's an expensive investment to rely on, a little bike chain on the back.
Yeah. Exactly. Michelle's got another good question here. Do they have folding electric bikes, Ray?
Yeah, they actually have incredibly compact folding bikes. Matter of fact, I sent a picture to John yesterday. There's a company out of the UK that's developed a bike that's called Go Cycle, and their corporate offices for the US are in Minneapolis. This bike is about 35 pounds compact. It's a single rider, but it folds up into a bag that is the size of an airport luggage piece. And it's very, very compact. But most of the manufacturers, Tern, I think Pedigo may have them. They've developed compact folding bikes that fold into three pieces. It usually splits just behind just in front of the seat, and then just behind the handlebars, and it kind of folds up in a Z, so that the wheels are basically next to each other, and then the handlebars fold down, and it usually fits in a bag that's got either some casters on the bottom or a couple of really good handles. And that's what I said. You can put that if you have a Class C or a Class A and you've got a basement storage, you can throw them under there. If not, I know that I could easily lay that bike sideways and throw it under the bed in my RV.
Yeah, I think Andy Park did a review on one of those. on his Gadget Guru channel. Because I remember
I actually saw Andy's. I followed Andy for a long time and watched him go through his pilgrimage from the different RVs that before he ended up at the Prevost. I just saw him receive that electric bike, and he opened it and pulled it out of the cardboard box and all of that. And then, I tell everybody, make sure that where you bought it from, that they've actually that they're a legitimate supplier and they can support you, long term.
Okay, Walter. Hey, Walter. Good to hear from you tonight. He says that Swagman bike racks hold up to 70 pounds per bike, 2 bikes on the rack. So I assume you can probably get those at any parts and accessory store. Walter is our new food critic on our NERVDA channel. He's been posting some incredible food recipes lately, so he'll probably add 20 or 30 pounds to every camper out there this summer. And in 2019,
then you're going to need the electric bike,
Right.
And one thing, too, just so you know, there's been studies that have been done because everybody has said, well, electric bikes are cheating. And the reality is the University of Colorado did a study, and they put 50 people on electric bikes, and they monitored them. And what they found is that the people were actually riding more and longer on the electric bikes. And so while there wasn't a short burst of intensive cardiac in it, over the range of the test, they actually were more fit than the people who rode regular bikes because there was an incentive to take the thing out.
Interesting. Interesting. Who else? Let's check in and see who else we have on here tonight. We got Michelle, we got Laurie, and thank you for the kind words. It's nice to be back. And we got Ed Laturco. He stopped up a couple of times to see me in the hospital. And Ed's a big biker. He does the Pan Mass Challenge, or I don't think he's doing it anymore, but he loves to do that kind of stuff. Laurie says she sees them used at dog shows. I assume to get around the. Is that, Laurie? Is it to help them walk the dog so they don't have to walk, and they take the bike and then they take the dog out for a little running, or is it just to get around the venue?
No, Bob, it's actually the dog pulls the bike.
It's not horsepower, it's dog
power. The battery that much that way. You just have the dog. Now, we work with your kind of dogs, but with a golden retriever or a black lab, they work great.
Yeah. We should mention, I don't think we mentioned it before, Bill Sell is on here. He said he would tune in and view in. Of course, we know Bill from the local New England scene and some of the activities. In fact, Bill's the guy that introduced me to Ray a couple of years ago, and we had dinner at the RVDA convention to talk about potential ideas on how the RV industry could get more involved. One way, and we'll talk to some of our local dealers, but most of our dealers are renting now. The RV industry is so hot. But we got dealers that have 10 or 20 RV rentals, and RV rentals are not cheap because you're an RVer, Ray. You know that. And so
anyway, I mean, we're talking about on average, even if we rented, and Bill will tell you, when we were doing our events, we were renting fifth wheelers and having them delivered so that they were our on-site accommodations and security office for the events, and we were paying anywhere from on the low end of $225 up to $350 a night, plus a delivery fee. And we didn't go anywhere. I mean, for 4 nights, the coach just sat in a parking lot. But I know that premium level coaches are out there renting for $300 to $500 a night, plus mileage after a base mileage, and that's on top of only getting 8 miles to the gallon and pouring your own money into the gas tank. So I'm really familiar with it, and that's one of the things John and I talked about. I had only wished that I had kept my American Eagle, because if I had known that, I would have put it in the rental market out here in Vegas.
Yep. Hey, Ray, let me bring up a topic that hasn't been brought up yet, and I think it's pretty cool. You never really, if you've got a Vespa or you've got a moped or if you've got a motorcycle or whatever, you can go a certain distance and you can physically, in reality, run out of gas. But with these, even if you've used the charge that it says it's good for, you're never really stranded not of gas because you pedal back under your own power.
Correct.
So I think it's a very important factor that you don't have
the motor systems, these are passive motor systems in here that they run as a supplement. They basically are turning that either the wheel or they're turning the crank where the pedals are with some assistance. I mean, you can still use the gears and all of that, but when that motor is not operating, you're pedaling and driving the bike on your own. And if you ran out of charge, then that's a very likely thing for you. You're going to ride back on pedaling. You need to also understand electronics too. And this is something important I want to say that you're not going to find on your typical motorcycle. The sophistication of the electronics that are built into these little tiny displays on the bikes, in many cases now they're transitioning over to becoming your cell phone. So the GPS technology, all of the measurement technologies in terms of where you are, the distance that you've traveled, and the intelligence that it learns from the battery over time will actually tell you. You can actually say, I want to go from this point to that point. And because GPS can measure the altitude and everything you're traveling, it might come back and tell you, you might not have enough energy to drive your electric bike this direction. Use an alternative route and you'll be able to make it back home. I mean, these are the kinds of technologies being built into bikes today.
And one of the things that I would say is very important to remember that is if you are going to go beyond your, your miles or your time, to use the bike to go uphill so that when you quote unquote run out of energy, your trip back is all downhill.
Yeah. Well, you can do that. I mean,
you bring up a good point, Ray. Talk about recharging them. So what happens in that scenario and how quickly are they rechargeable?
Well, a full battery, one of these 500 watt or greater batteries, to full charge on it, it takes about 4 hours. But I will tell you that if you had let's say you were planning on doing a 30-mile or a 40-mile ride, you might throw the charger in your backpack, and you're going to bring bottles of water or something with you. And you're going to make a trip, and wherever you're going to end up, odds are you'll be able to find a place to plug in and throw it on the charger. And you will charge about 80% of the bike in about a third of the time. So in about an hour, you'll get 80% of the distance in a charge. The way lithium batteries work is they can charge very, very fast for the first 70% of the capacity. The remaining 30% takes just as much time as it took to charge the 70%, because it's what we call a taper charge or a trickle charge. They can't stuff as much into the battery at that level, so it reduces the amount so it doesn't overcharge or damage the battery. So if it's kind of like a Tesla. You can plug it in for 45 minutes and get 200 miles out of it, not the 300 miles out of it. But if you charged overnight, you'd get all 300. So having that charger in your backpack and being able to just, if you went to a rest stop and you decided to eat lunch, bring the battery off the bike, bring it in the restaurant, ask the charge, plug it in somewhere, and you'll have more than enough to be able to get home. And like you said, Bob, make sure it's somewhat more downhill.
So the charger itself is a standard 110, no different than charging smartphone.
It's very low voltage, actually. To understand, the chargers that are charging a lithium battery on a bicycle are only pulling about 2 to 3 amps. So it's like your cell phone. That's really all it is. It may be a bigger charger because of trying to push more capacity through, but it doesn't use a lot. And as I said, the average total charge of a 500 watt electric bike motor uses on average in New England electricity bills about 9 cents worth of electricity.
That's amazing.
Walter's got another gem here, and it has nothing to do with food, but he's got a report on bike racks. So for you folks who have been asking questions about the size and the weight and what have you, you want to grab that URL there and check out that report on the bike racks themselves. Ray, this has been incredible. We can still go another 10, 15 minutes here, but
sure. What
are we leaving out of the questions that a consumer or our audience is RVers? What are we missing or leaving out that they need to know?
Here's what I would suggest. The first thing, and I know you guys are looking at like the Pedigo line, there are a number of bike retailers all around the country that are near some of your great recreational destinations that rent bikes, whether it be on the West Coast here on the beaches and the boardwalks, or in the wine country, or up in New England there. I'm sure there are bike shops that are renting them for a couple of hours. And I tell everybody, the only way they can truly understand the benefit that this is going to provide, they've got to get on the bike and do that and let everybody kind of get the feel for it. And then, oddly enough, they will come up with 10 reasons why they absolutely have to have one. The rental thing that you suggested on the business side, we're seeing it more and more, certainly out here in the West, where there's a lot of RV destination rentals. And I'm finding it virtually on every checklist when I go to rent an RV from, one of these share my rides or share my coach or whatever, that kind of stuff. There's always an element besides bedding and pots and pans for bikes. And so some of these guys have caught on and they're actually renting. Well, they may not be renting electric bikes, but they are renting bicycles. So electric bikes would certainly be something that there's a great opportunity for. There's a premium charge for it. People can get further. It fits the demographics. It's an interesting scenario, but you're going to see it. I mean, you've got ride shares growing all over the country that are using electric bikes now. So there are cities that you can go to and literally, put your credit card in and rent a bike by the minute. I mean, so
Ray, short of renting one, and I totally agree that you should rent one because you just got to get that feel when you get on, that feel of power that when you're on it. But as I went into a major New England retailer over the weekend, and they have a giant bike shop and a ski shop, etc. But the person that I asked a few basic questions to wasn't versed at all. In other words, I kind of knew more than him, which was kind of sad. However,
unfortunately, John, that's what it is. You've got to go to smaller bike shops that have made a commitment to the electric bike market and just call them in advance or look online and see if they offer demos.
Well, is there an online source for generic information? Again, I'm not promoting.
There's a number of sources out there that are online that are great to look at. The first one would be a fellow compatriot of ours, and he has a website called electricbikereport.com. And his name is Pete that runs that. And Pete's been doing this for about 10 years. So he's got a lot of detail. It's more about bike reviews and parts and pieces and all of that. He gets in a little bit into the travel stuff. Another site out there is called electricbikereview.com. And the gentleman that runs that, his name is Court Rye. And again, he's been doing this since early 2000s and has got a lot of historical information.
If they've been doing it since that long, these guys were really pioneers in it.
Oh, yeah. We were all together in the very beginning when we were all looking at each other, trying to figure out, where this market was going.
Yeah, for our friends close to Boston, Bill just posted this, that E-Bikes of Boston is a rental location on the Charles River in Watertown.
There you go.
The old Peter Fuller Olds Cadillac Company. I'm old enough to remember the old Peter Fuller Olds Cadillac Company, Mr. Sell.
There are places all over the place. The other thing that I would do, if you want to learn more about the actual where the legislation is going and the approvals, like the state of Connecticut just approved the legalization of electric bikes on bike lanes literally last week. But there is an organization called peopleforbikes.org. It's just all one thing, peopleforbikes.org, and there is an electric bike section that literally lists every state in terms of what their policies are on the use of electric bikes. And then there are information resources on there as to places, certainly for mountain bikes, to be able to go and ride on trails that are acceptable for electric mountain bikes. So that's another growth place that's in there. But again, the internet is filled with all this information, and I'm sure that you guys in your dealer organization here, you'll be able to start adding elements to your own website that talks about these bikes and the cargo bikes and the trikes for people who are, have a challenge with balance. I mean, there's trikes that are out there and cargo units that mount on the back that can carry a pallet of goods. I mean, so there's lots of options out there for people to look at.
Can you answer Ed's question here, Ray?
Sure.
Have him discuss the difficulty in pedaling an e-bike versus a road bike. Is that
well? There again, you're dealing with the exact same scenario of pedaling. The only thing is you're going to have the assist. They do make electric road bikes, and they actually look with the turn down handlebars, and they're very streamlined. And where those are being used is guys that have been riding their touring bikes for years. They're just plain worn out. They got a bad hip or a bad knee, and they still want to ride, so they're going to these electric bikes that are what we call Class 3s. And a Class 3 electric bike is actually a bike that has the ability to go up to 28 miles per hour under pedal assist. So for the guys that are used to touring and really grouping with with the wolf pack out there, being able to do 28 miles an hour on a bike with pedal assist, I can tell you on my bike here, I can do about 11 miles in 15 miles in 11 minutes.
Hey, Ray, let me bring up two things here, and they both involve safety. Sure. Ironically, a lot of the publicity that I've seen, not publicity, but the advertising that I've seen, does not show people with helmets on. And if we're doing 15, 20 miles an hour, I'll tell you, I would strongly suggest a helmet.
We never rode anywhere without a helmet, and all of our events required you to put a helmet on.
Yeah.
Again, I'm an old motorcyclist, and I know that up in New England, in certain places, you could ride without a helmet, but I know what people look like when they've fallen off a bike, even at 20 miles an hour without a helmet, and I don't want to be one of them. So,
and I think the other point that we absolutely, just for legal purposes, Bob, have to say here is that if you're considering this is for off-road use. This is not to get on the interstate, to drive in the breakdown lane. This is not to get on the Southeast Expressway. This is not to get on Starro Drive. This is off-road
recreational.
Well, I wouldn't say. I would say local streets. I mean, people are using them for commuting all day long. But you're right. You're not going to get out there and battle traffic. On, like you said, on Starro Drive, where people are doing 60 miles an hour while they're texting, because you'll just become a hood ornament. Helmet or not. So what I would suggest is, it's like anything. You've got to develop your senses, ride with confidence. There are things going on in the industry. I will tell you right now that Ford Motor Company and Trek have gotten together to literally, because there's power on a bicycle, they're actually working on technology that has the same kind of sensors that you have in your car right now in the bumper, where the mirror tells you that somebody's in your blind spot. They're working on elements like that literally tell a bicyclist that there's somebody behind them and it's vibrating in your seat. So these kinds of sensor capabilities, now that there's electricity on a bicycle, there's a plethora of really cool things that are coming down the road for bicycles. But still, common sense is common sense, But yes, we tell people to ride with helmets. We tell them don't ride with flip-flops. Better have a shoe that's got a lace on it. It's common sense.
You had said before 15 miles in 11 minutes. And somebody said that's fast. That's more than 60 miles an hour. Is that?
No.
Is that 15 miles
15
in 11
mile
minutes?
Difference in 11 minutes.
So 15 miles in 15 minutes. Isn't that 60 miles an hour?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Well, maybe it's the other way. I'm doing 15 and 11, but 11 miles in 15 minutes. There's a particular route that I'm able to do here. Yeah, I'm able, because I'll pedal faster than that 28 miles an hour. But with that assistance, that gets me up there to where my pedaling work is then after it. So,
Jesse, thanks for bringing that up. We don't, you know what? We want to promote safety. We certainly don't want people going.
No. But again, if I'm not on a street with cars. I'm on a bike lane that's literally adjacent to the highway, and I'm keeping up with traffic. But
it's amazing.
But the cool part is I'm done in 20 minutes. I put the bike back in the garage, and that's it. That's my exercise for the day.
Then you can go have a couple beers.
There you go.
Well, I know Zagami was figuring before, if he could go 40 minutes on the bike, and then knowing that he needs 40 minutes to, regenerate the battery, there's a couple Jack Daniels there.
Oh, believe me, we've got plenty of people that they literally plan out their route based on the stops, not necessarily on the distance. They cycle from destination to destination. Yeah, I mean it's fun. I mean, think about going in a group. If you had here, I'll give you a quick story this was something, and Bill will remember this. We were in Minneapolis, and we had a husband and wife that showed up at one of our events, and they were probably in their late 50s, early 60s. They had been cyclists pretty much all their lives. That's how they met. They got together, they got married, they've been together 25 years, and they were cycling. And he would ride his bike to work. She would do, I mean, all of these aggressive riding. And his wife had an accident, not on a bike, but she had an accident that hurt something that she wasn't able to ride the bike regularly. So they went out and they bought her an electric bike. And outside of this area, Minneapolis, there's an area with 7 hills. And they came to us and they told us the story where the woman, they would go out ride, he'd be on his regular road bike and she'd be on the electric bike. And the reason that they came to our event was she was tired of getting to the top of the hill on every one of the 7 hills and having to wait for him. So they were there to buy an electric bike for him so he could keep up.
Keep up with her. That's great.
I mean, that's the kind of
I've seen we would adhere to our 30-minute time limit.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We kind of blew that kind of quickly this week, didn't we? God bless it. Yeah. Well, Ray, this has been fantastic. Our guest tonight has been Ray Verhelst, who is one of, I don't have to tell you now, you already know, you listened to him for an hour, probably one of the best electric bike experts in the country. But you had some really good advice to certainly let them get out there and rent. The same thing we say to RVers. If you haven't bought an RV before, why would you go out and blow $200,000 and not know if you're going to like it, or like the size of it, or like how it drives? It's practical.
$200,000 would be cheap. Ask Andy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, go buy an American Eagle today, Ray, and see.
Oh no. Matter of fact, Andy's listening. I'm looking at an Integra, but believe me, I gotta sell one of my children.
But Bob, we had great questions brought up by our audience too, didn't we?
We did, yeah. And talking about the audience, folks, after you get done with the show, we kind of breezed through everything, but it was such a fast-paced show. Be sure to share the show tonight with your friends who were not on here. Ray, are you available for emails or? Oh,
sure. Anything you want, send it through. I'll point people in directions.
You want them to get me first, or you want me to put your email up?
Yeah, and John, I sent you those photos. So if you're going to build a follow-up, you got some great photos of cargo bikes with kids on them, folding bikes. A number of different sources, and I sent you that funny one from China.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to pull those up. I did pull up a thing of one of your previous events, and people love these types of events, and it's a great way to understand the bikes and learn how they work. And you're right. I mean, I was absolutely surprised when I got on the electric bike and ran it around the Boston Auto Show last year.
He was surprised. He ain't kidding.
Yeah. No, I was more surprised when I was laying on the concrete.
When you get to where you're going, you're talking about going to Oshkosh and realizing the size of that air show. If you have the opportunity to get an electric bike to be able to go around from the various plane sites to the different campgrounds to the different buildings, you will become so addicted to having this electric bike because you will not feel exhausted at the end of the day. You'll actually try and find an excuse to go to the store at night.
Exactly. I'm trying to convince my wife to drive one as well.
I just noticed the guy that asked the question about 15 miles in 11 minutes is Jesse Brissett. Jesse's sales manager down at Hemlock Hill RV in Connecticut. They sell a very small trailer called the Sylvan Go. Is it possible that you could tow something small with an electric bike?
Actually, there are bikes that are out there that are towing that capacity, and it's more of the cargo bikes that have that extra capacity. There's a bike out of Europe called Reese Mueller that actually has 2 batteries on it, so it gives you the extra power to be able to do it. But as you'll see, there are bike trailers right now that are carrying kids and dogs on the back of regular bikes. And an electric bike has the capacity to carry at least another 150 pounds without it stressing the motor at all. So something lightweight. There are bike campers out there, guys that have been kind of entrepreneurial that build their own things on it. But I'll make sure to send Bob. I'll send you and John some pictures of what people have done.
Yeah, we'll do some follow-up posts on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Ray, we'll post when we do this. We will continue to. So we've got X number of viewers now, but the bulk of the viewing is going to be in a replay. But what we do is for 4 or 5 days, we check to see what other posts people have been putting in. So Bob, let's make sure that we put Ray's email on that people can get to him directly.
Yeah, and I'll make sure to answer anybody, and I'll send them a bunch of photos and links and individual names and contacts, whatever they need. I mean, we'll get them connected.
That's great. Ray, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your Las Vegas evening, and congratulations again on the Golden Knights. That was an exciting run for an expansion team, and but hopefully we're coming back to Las Vegas in November with the RVDA convention. So you and I will talk beforehand and see if we can set up some meetings for you and get some of these RV people talking about electric bikes also.
Plus, we also want to thank his press agent and press secretary, Bill Sell, for.
Yeah. Bill did the background work. Ray has to do all the heavy lifting. Right. Well,
that's right.
We've seen that. Ray, thank you very much. We're going to, John, any closing words? And thank you.
No, I just want to thank Ray. I mean, you know what? This is an exciting thing. And I'm even going to suggest to Jesse, hire Ray to come to your store. With the accessory store you've got down there, I think it'd be a perfect place to sell these bikes. And Ray doesn't sell them, so it's not something that, is putting money in his pocket. But I think the more education that we can provide to them.
I certainly could help Jesse in terms of finding some manufacturers that might come and do a little demo a day in front of his store if he could reciprocate with a bunch of his customers.
They do stuff like that during open houses. It's a perfect
That's
draw.
what I'm saying. Yeah,
people in.
I would do it. I would, again, and we can help find some local reps that are up in the area, and they usually have some vans with 2 or 3 bikes apiece in the back, and somebody could come by and see them. But
we'll
help wherever we can.
A good family business, long-standing family business. They're very creative. They have a lot of open houses, and they do a lot of different things. So I'm sure we stirred up a few ideas in Jesse's mind tonight.
There you go.
We also want to welcome Zagami back. He came back with flying colors, to say the least. Considering he was lying comatose this time last week, and now he's smiling again. And originally he was just going to engineer the show, and then I think he got a burst of energy about 5 o'clik. He said, "Hell, I'm going to be on the show."
When you said he was in the hospital, I thought I was going to call him Iron Man, but now he's just Titanium Man.
I want to tell you how comatose I was last Wednesday night. I remember absolutely nothing.
Well, that's good.
And it wasn't,
you don't want to remember.
It wasn't until Friday that my wife asked me if she remembered our conversations on Wednesday night. My wife was there. My daughter and son-in-law were there. And the only thing my son-in-law remembered was I asked him if they had any Jack Daniels. I don't even remember them being in the room.
The truth of the matter is he asked the doctor before going into surgery if they could put some Jack Daniels in the IV.
Yeah, why not?
Exactly.
It's a main line. Why bother having to worry about putting it past the gums?
And maybe he did, and maybe that's the reason for the fast recovery. I got a whole new Jack Daniels commercial I can sell to.
There you go.
Foreman. All right, Ray, thank you very much for taking time. Always great to see you. And John, thank you very much for filling in the last 4 or 5 weeks, whatever it's been. But
I'm going to share this right now.
Good to be back.
Cool.
See you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye now. Good night.